Alright, this is number 53. I'm actually going to slug my way through the quadratic formula, pencil and paper. And I've said this several times, if you haven't programmed your calculator to do the quadratic formula. Oh well, alright, so first thing is I need to put everything on the same side of the equation. I need to find my A, B, and my C values. So I see here that A is 2, B is a -5, and C is a +1. So, very important that you get these three values right, even when you're using the calculator. So, here's the equation. It calls for the opposite of B. Now, I don't want to say negative B, because if B is already negative, folks say, well, it's negative already. No, it means the opposite of B. So, if B is a -5, the opposite of a -5 is a +5. Plus or minus the square root of -5 squared minus 4 times the A value times the C value. All of this divided by twice A, twice 2. A is 2. So what we got here is 5 plus or minus the square root of, this guy here is going to be 25, minus 4 times 2 times 1, which is 8. 25 minus 8 is going to be 17. And all this is divided by 4. So you got two answers. You've got 5 plus the square root of 17 divided by 4, comma 5 minus the square root of 17 divided by 4. Now, what's going to happen is, even if you're doing this with your calculator, which I've been touting, it's not going to give you radical 17, which is an irrational number. What you're going to have to do, maybe it makes sense actually to know the quadratic, because what you're going to have to do is, in a multiple choice test, you would have to take the 4 answers, change them to decimals, and, you have to take the 4 answers, change them to decimals, because that's what your calculator is going to do. It's going to give you your answer in decimal form. It's not going to give you plus or minus the square root of 17. So maybe I'll retract that. Maybe it's probably a darn good idea that you know how to do this, or take the answers, change them to decimals, match them up. When you do the quadratic formula with your calculator, the answer will be a decimal. You'll have to take the 4 answers that are given to you, change them to decimals, and figure out which one it is. So all that being said, maybe it's not a bad idea just to do this quadratic formula, pencil and paper. I stand corrected. All right. Let me just write number 50. I guess I'll do 54. And what have I got here? 4x to the second plus 3 equals x. So I'll rewrite this in standard form. I'll bring the x over as a negative. Plus 3 equals 0. My a value is 4. My b value is understood to be a -1. And my c value is 3. So the equation calls for the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So the opposite of a -1 is a +1. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. So b is -1. I'm going to square that, minus 4 times a times c. So it's minus 4 times a, which is also 4, times 3. All of this divided by 2 times a, which is 4. So I end up with 1 plus or minus the square root. And let's see, if I multiply all this out, this is going to be 1 minus 48 divided by 2 times 4 is 8. This is 1 plus or minus the square root of -47 divided by 8. Now, notice -47 is a imaginary number, so I'm going to write that as plus or minus the square root of 47 times the square root of -1 divided by 8. And I realize that the square root of -1, right here, the square root of -1 is letter I. I like to put that I in front of the radical. All right, if I put it in back of the radical, sometimes it appears that the I is under the radical. So by putting it in front, you're in business. Sometimes you may see the answer written this way. You may see it written as 1 over 8 plus the square root of 47 over 8i, and then 1 over 8 minus the square root of 47 over 8i. All right, so these are two different ways of writing the same answer. So getting back to what I'm saying, I've been making a big deal of, you got to do the quadratic formula on your calculator. Well, unless you're going to take this answer, all right, and first of all, it contains i's. Take this answer. If you did it with your calculator, change it to a decimal, but then you'd have to take each one of the 4 answers on the test, change all those to decimals, and then match up the one that you had, as opposed to just doing out with the quadratic form, the pencil and paper. So I stand corrected that it's still not a bad idea to know how to do this. But when you practice it, you'll come up with the best strategy for yourself.